I'm not here to waste your time. You found this video through one of two ways. You either A, watched the first part of this run, or B, had this video randomly appear in your recommendations. If it's the latter, I highly recommend you go back and you watch part 1, as it explains not just the rules of this challenge, but also a lot of the tricks that I'll be using. But if you're too enthralled with my beautiful voice to click off the video just yet, I'll give you a quick summary of those rules right now. Jumping, hovering, gliding, and jump combos all count as jumping. Grappling, riding vehicles, and climbing up nets do not. It's a pretty simple rule set, and anything more specific we'll cover along the way. This run is being played on a fresh save file, and not only do just the levels count, but everything in the overworld as well. I am not allowed to jump at any point unless absolutely necessary. This overworld clause plays a huge role in the original trilogy, since a lot of the missions require you to solve a puzzle before entering into the actual level. Before we jump into the actual run, I want to thank you all for your support on the last video. It did better than I could have ever imagined, and even reached one of the lead TT game developers himself, who was kind enough to retweet the video. So again, huge thank you to all of you. And once again, remember, if you are enjoying these videos, that liking, commenting, and subscribing really helps out small channels like mine and helps us find our footing. Sharing the video around is also the #1 thing that impresses YouTube's algorithm. Follow my Twitch, join my Discord, and all of that kind of stuff. Links are all down below as always. But without further ado, let's continue our journey and answer the question: can you beat LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga without jumping Original Trilogy Edition? Now, unlike in the prequels, we hit a roadblock very early on in our playthrough. In the very first level of A New Hope, all goes well up until this point, where you have to jump onto this trampoline, bounce up, and pull this lever. As we discussed in part 1, because trampolines do not require you to perform any action to actually bounce up, it does not count as jumping. If they were to, for example, make you hold down A for a bigger bounce, then they definitely would. But regardless, we need to figure out a way onto these trampolines in the first place. Doing any kind of combo won't work because no character here has any overhead throw. And grappling won't work either, since there is nothing to grapple with. The solution is actually quite simple. Backtrack just a little bit until you find this gonk droid, and walk them back to your trampoline room. Now sadly, you can't just hop off the gonk droid and land right on the trampoline. That would be way too easy, and the game forces you onto solid ground anyways, even if you're completely surrounded by other objects. Instead, on the left side of the trampoline path, squish the gonk between the trampoline and the wall, and he should glitch out and get pushed right on top of the trampoline, bouncing you right up to your first lever. Now, it is worth noting that while I got this trick to work pretty quickly on the left side, it took way longer on the right side. And an easier way in hindsight for me would have just been to guide him over with very careful bounces from the left to the right while the second player pulls the trampoline. But either way, let's continue moving forward. The rest of level 1 goes by very easily. Just make sure to choose the 3PO path rather than the R2 path and shuffle on down to Tatooine. The spaceport level poses zero challenge, as jumping isn't required in the slightest, which is just music to my ears. The next part, however, becomes a bit tricky. Once you land on the Death Star, you can get through the very first Luke and Leia level section with ease. In order to begin the Obi Wan section, however, you'll have to force 3PO onto the platform instead of just jumping over yourself. It's a very minor skip, but still thought I should include it. When you're back playing as Han and the crew again, you'll reach another roadblock. Or at least what I thought would be a roadblock. In my first playthrough of the game, I assumed the only way to open the door you needed to open was to break apart this terminal, rebuild it, then pull this lever. The thing is, the scoundrel class of characters aren't able to grapple, making grabbing this lever impossible without using a single jump. I tried for almost an hour to gain some height through various combos, but it just didn't work, and I thought we had finally hit our first jump of the trilogy. But as it turns out, you can just kind of like shoot this random button and it opens the door. Yeah. Once you're through there, all you have to do for the rest of A New Hope is climb up these 20 flights of stairs on Yavin for no fucking reason and destroy the Death Star, all which takes a pretty easy 0 jumps. Man, the OT seems to be pretty simple compared to the prequels right now. I sure hope nothing tedious happens that takes an entire day to record and do. The first level in The Empire Strikes Back requires a lot of weird technical tricks. The first of those being knowing how to trick the game into allowing you to grapple instead of jump. Take our first little bump in the road when you're on this bar. You need to progress just one bar higher, but the only prompt you get in-game is for jumping. However, if you tilt your camera in just the right way and strafe left and right really fast as your character, you'll see about a 1-frame window where you can hit B and successfully grapple up. Oh, but hold on, we are still not done. This is one of those situations where you can't just press B to simply fall off the bar and activate this sensor. It's a bit more complicated than that. Again, as we discussed in our last video, when you die, the game can only respawn you on the last ground you touched. In this case, if we tried to kill the second player right now, he would just respawn on the base of the tower, effectively putting us back on square one. Now in this situation, we're looking for one of two things. Number one, a way to drop off of this bar. Or number two, a way to set our respawn point at the very top of this tower. And after about an hour and a half of testing, I figured something incredible out. When you are in the grappling state, the game will find the quickest route to send you from point A to point B. And if there is some ground in the way of that path, you'll just clip very slightly through it. Now how does that help us? Well, clipping through that ground also counts as touching that ground. So, if we grapple up, grapple down at the very edge of the bar, then grapple back up again, the last ground we technically touched was at the very top and edge of the tower. Now if player 2 shoots you from below and we die, we then respawn on the top of the tower, accomplishing our goal. Man, that was a lot to do, but it isn't even close to the most complicated thing this episode has to offer. You can thankfully repeat this same strategy for every tower in the first level, and finish the mission of rescuing Luke. And now we can move on to our next section of the run, Dagobah. Now this is my favorite part of the challenge by far. Not just because it's not that difficult, but also because I just find it pretty funny. At this point in the game, you're supposed to do this kind of like mini Jedi training course as Yoda and Luke, which requires, believe it or not, a lot of jumping. And I mean a lot of jumping. You have to hit these very certain checkpoints along the training course in order to move on to the next one. Remember that one scene in The Empire Strikes Back where Yoda tells Obi Wan there is another? Well, what if I told you he wasn't talking about Leia here, and instead, he was talking about Jedi Grand Master R2-D2. Using the Force as Luke, and some very tricky positioning, you're actually able to fling R2 on top of every single checkpoint along the course, but this is not easy. You'll have to take full advantage of Dagobah's rough terrain to sprint yourself up the trunks of some of these trees. The higher, the better. Then force R2 into the air to make them land on the yellow circles. You'll know you're doing it right when you hear dialogue from both Luke and Yoda talking to each other. I think my favorite use of this trick is right here, where you can't get close enough to just drop R2 onto the platform. You'll have to kind of wind up this almost like Jedi baseball pitch throw and just barely make it up. It's a really fun way to just explore the weird physics of this game, and the most fun I had in this entire episode. The rest of Empire is pretty straightforward. The only trick you have to do is right here with Luke and R2, since these platforms are just barely too far apart to walk across. So instead just use the Force on R2. But that ends off Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope with 0 jumps. I'm a bit skeptical to say the run is going well, seeing as what happened last time, but honestly, the run is going pretty well. God damn it, again. Return of the Jedi gets off to a very rough start. In our first level, we run into this area, which is just a big ass hole in the ground you need to grapple over, and then jump to get up. You aren't able to do our little Hoth trick right here since there is no ground to clip through, and you can't just climb up since the B button drops you straight down. But I had a plan. On both sides of the big ass hole in the ground, there is a small ledge you can walk on. If you sprint at this ledge, you can actually make some pretty decent coverage and make it just under halfway across. I figured to myself that if I had enough speed, I could clear this gap. So I quit the level, grinded out some Kyber bricks, and upgraded my sprint to the maximum level. And while I got a bit closer, it still wasn't enough. I then went to grind out even more Kyber bricks and upgraded the Scoundrel slide ability all the way to the max, and attempted the very same trick, but to no avail. Again, I got closer, but I just couldn't clear it. This was becoming frustrating, and here's why. You aren't able to always be sprinting during this level. Since you're technically supposed to be covert, you can only sprint while you're in combat, and combat sprint only lasts for about 1 minute. So in order to properly test this trick, you have to hit this alarm, walk back, and attempt the trick. If you fail, you fall down into our big ass hole, and have to waste time climbing back up. Now here's the even more fun part. For some reason, NPCs and your partner player as well just stop moving mid-ladder climb, forcing you to either have to kill one of the guards, switch to your partner player, or if you're really unlucky, get soft-locked when an unkillable NPC gets stuck mid-climb. Needless to say, this was a very frustrating trick. If you killed too many guards, you wouldn't be able to enter combat ever again, and would have to restart the entire level. You can only pull off this trick in 1-minute intervals and have a very high chance to just get soft-locked, but I still wasn't done trying. So our sprint sliding technique doesn't work, the grapple drop didn't work, what more was there to try? Well, I had one final trick up my sleeve, and if this didn't work, I would have to just accept the L and take one jump. In almost every single LEGO video game, there are these things called extras, which are settings you can buy that affect your game in very minor ways. This can be as simple as turning every lightsaber into bread or multiplying your stud count by 10. There were 2 extras, however, that I was particularly interested in: Gonk civilians and Super Gonk droids. Now here was my thought process. If I could turn all the bystanders in this level into Gonk droids, I could potentially ride along the wall and dismount at the proper time. However, my fear was that the Gonk droids would not be fast enough, hence needing Super Gonk droids as well. And after grinding for a couple hours for that 2 million studs needed for this, a sad realization happened. You actually cannot ride the Gonk droid civilians, so with that, we have to take our first jump of the OT. Now here's the good news. I truly believe this part can be done jumpless, but after recording for almost a full 6 hours in 1 day on this level, reset after reset, soft lock after soft lock, I just got tired of trying something I didn't even know was possible in the first place. But now it's time for everybody's favorite parts of these videos: salt in the wound. Directly after this, we reach a point in the level where you have to pull down 2 levers to open a gate. Again, this is very easy for Leia, but not so much for Chewie, who doesn't have the grappling ability. Now I swear to you, once again, I tried everything. I somehow even managed to clip Chewie out of bounds inside this box, but it didn't do anything for us. I tried to slide under the door when it was just half open, but there was an invisible wall blocking the way. This once again required 2 more jumps to beat. I had to grind for hours to get the proper amount of Kyber bricks and studs to unlock all the extras and the abilities. And I promise you I'm trying my hardest, but the game just keeps throwing these curveballs. Once we finish Jabba's palace, we get to our fight on the sand ship thing, and really only have to pull out just one trick. Force this box below this ledge, drop a character onto it, force the box back up, and walk off onto your desired platform. Hold Y to skip the cutscene, then start the Endor section, the final gauntlet of this run. And I mean it when I say this section is a gauntlet. First off, build the Ewok hammer and go onto our left path. Rub up against this elevator for a very uncomfortable amount of time, and repeatedly hit and kill Chewbacca. When Chewie dies, the elevator should activate. Quickly position Chewbacca beneath where the elevator is about to fall and trap him with the net gun. This net gun part is optional but speeds up the process by a whole lot. You can get the net gun early by going to the right first and then backtracking to the left path. When the elevator falls, Chewbacca will die and respawn right near you. Kill him again without him actually leaving the ground, and he should respawn on the elevator. Now, if you don't want to use the net gun, you can just pray to the RNG gods that he respawns on the elevator, but have fun with that. Anyways, use the net gun to create a net on this wall and, regrettably, jump up onto it. I tried to get around this with the scoundrel slide or just by trying to walk around to the other side, but I wasn't able to get anything out of that. And as restrictive as this level is, there really wasn't much to work with. Next, you'll find yourself at the gliding section. Jump off the lower platform to save yourself a jump, and grab the rope to finish off this level and the trilogy with only 2 required jumps, putting us at 5 jumps for the entire trilogy. Even though we're still not through this jump list, it's better than the forced 27 jumps in the final level of the prequels. 5 jumps in 3 movies is less than 2 jumps per episode, which I'm pretty happy with. Again, I think this number could be lowered down by 1 in Jabba's palace, but that's about as low as I see this total going. Amazingly enough, in free play, you can beat this entire trilogy with 0 total jumps, by using the Force on a droid to bypass all of our previous puzzles. This puts us, in full, at 32 jumps in story mode and 4 jumps in free play. But don't worry, we still have one more chance to do an entire trilogy without jumping, in our final 3rd act of this challenge, the sequels. And I hope you guys are ready, because for that one, I'm not holding anything back. I hope to see you guys return to the channel for it, and if you're not already, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. Don't forget to watch part 1 if you missed it, and to like and comment on the video to help me out in the algorithm just a little bit. Join my Discord if that interests you, and make sure to follow my Twitch where I do these live occasionally. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you in the next part.